are critical their mandate. Kenha is one of those KA, which is currently, as you have heard it, how difficult it was, that some of the land is not in their possession, despite in their books indicating that it is for KA. National Housing Corporation and KPC, Kenya Public Corporations, Kenya Wildlife Services, those are some of the critical observations, and this is not unique to only those, but quite a number of state corporations we have realized have land issues, and those land issues have not been properly documented, and the titles are not in receipt by those state corporations. One of the key criticals we have served is that the Kenya Wildlife Services have 222 parcels of land, and it's only 45 parcels of land which have been registered, which is way out of the way. If you look at the Kenya Cooperative, Kenya KCC has 5 acres of its land which has been encroached out of the 32.9 acres which it is in their custody. So this idea of not having titles and lands which have been given to them is a recipe for encroachment, is a recipe for public encroaching into them and annexing it for their own personal use. So these are critical observations that we have had, and we have looked at it. One of the other issues we have realized is that the procurement process and the processes and management of control of finances is not properly done in terms of procurement, and it does not comply mostly with the Procurement Act of 2015. We have observed, as if I will mention to cite one of the examples, is that the Miritini Road, which has been awarded a contract to the farm Telewa road contractor, awarded at 341 million. When this project was midway, it could not be able to pursue and continue, and the project was terminated, and yet it was paid 144.1 million shillings. That is a colossal sum of money. And the project has winded right in the middle of its time. And later, the project was again awarded to MSS Mehta to a tune of 292 million shillings, which brings the total expenditure to nearly 436, which is over 28%. So that clearly indicates that most of the state corporations and some of the state corporations are going before more than the stipulated 25%. And it's our recommendation that we look into those things. And other matters which we have also realized is the Mitihani House, which was given a contract in 1989. Imagine in 1989 a project was awarded, and up to date, that project has not winded up. It has not been completed. And that gives an expenditure of 1.8 billion shillings. And the initial award was 248 million shillings. It has gone over the years, for the last many years, to a tune of 1.8 billion shillings. And because of this fund, these are key irregularities we have been able to observe. And there are a lot of other issues which are also.
Well, before I give the next member, let me just indicate the members who have contributed to this motion, so that we don't mix. The Honorable the Chair Abdul Somad Nasir, seconded by the Vice Chair Ibrahim Abdisalan. Honorable Dindi Nyoro has spoken. Honorable TJ Kajuang, Honorable Godfrey Osotsi, Honorable Gishimo Gidinji, Honorable Hassan Maalim, Honorable Rono Kipkoske, Honorable Chepkut Chirchir, the Honorable Dr. Nyikal, the Honorable Nyaga Mushiri, the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe. So any other member is at liberty to contribute. A very interesting coincidence, the member for Wajir East on this side, the next one on the screen, member for Eldas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know you are former chair of this very important committee. I was also the former chair. What is interesting, Mr. Speaker, the same historical issues, and I'm glad that, first of all, we looked at the standing orders in the last parliament and helped this committee even in avoiding the midterm reconstitution. I think they should be very grateful to us because those are some of the reforms that we introduced. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this committee has a very important mandate. And one of the important mandates is to examine in the context of autonomy and efficiency of public investment whether the affairs of public investments are being managed in accordance with sound financial management and principles. Mr. Speaker, over the years, the same issues that we used to raise are the same issues that have been raised. But one critical thing that the committee ought to consider is under the current constitutional framework, Mr. Speaker, which slightly has improved the mandate and even the efficacy of committees' work, Mr. Speaker, I thought we will think out of the box and ensure that these state corporations, which are very important investments, Mr. Speaker, function in line with prudent public financial management, public finance regulations, public procurement and asset disposal regulations, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, and international public sector accounting standards and international financial reporting standards. Mr. Speaker, why I'm saying this, if you look at the same observations, Mr. Speaker, the issue of ownership has been there since time immemorial. What is it that the ministries, the parent ministries and these parastatals have done in order to improve the land challenges, the land ownership challenges that they have had? If anything, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing. Meaning, therefore, these organizations are being used as a milking cow, Mr. Speaker, in order to grab public lands. And this is the high time, Mr. Speaker, the ministries and the parastatals, where these parastatals fall, critically look at the issue of ownership of land, because this is very important. This is a very important investment, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we can't be having the same audit queries, the same concerns, the same year in, year out. And therefore I want to really plead with the membership of this committee to critically dissect this and ensure that all state corporations with the land issues get title deeds as a matter of urgency, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that has always been there is the issue of procurement and execution of contract. This issue has been like this throughout. What we need to do right now, Mr. Speaker, because we have a progressive procurement laws, Mr. Speaker, this is the high time again that these key government investments are obligated by law to strictly follow the procurement regulations, Mr. Speaker. Without this, then the public investment and the public trust in these particular organizations will be a waste, and this has been the theory. And therefore, this is the high time that the committees invoke both the letter and the spirit of the current constitution, ensure that these parastatals do business differently in the way that because this has become the public money guzzler. It's like every year we vote money. Instead of making returns to the exchequer, what they do is they only bring back deficits. This is the high time, Mr. Speaker. We also limit these organizations in line with the Mongozo regulations, Mr. Speaker, because I do not know that policy was very important, was very good, was very progressive. But, Mr. Speaker, as usual, we fear implementing progressive laws. Where are the Mongozo regulations? Why are they not being implemented? It took a very broad-minded committees to come up with this. It has been shelved. This is the high time, Mr. Speaker, through you and through this House, that the Mongozo regulations are implemented so that we have productive and efficient public investment, Mr. Speaker, entities. Mr. Speaker, the other bit which has always been an issue is the issue of bending cases in court. Mr. Speaker, this issue again is one issue that has been abused. You realize that through the internally arranged legal representation, Mr. Speaker, or outsourced lawyers, this is one avenue of corruption, Mr. Speaker, and this is the high time that no case involving a particular state corporation should take more than a year or 2 years, Mr. Speaker. You realize there are cases that have been there for the last 10, 15 years. You ask yourself, if you ask the organization to declare how much they spent on that particular case, you realize it's even more than what the organization requires for operations. Meaning, therefore, you ask yourself, who benefits from that particular case? And it only reminds me what a friend of mine said. One time, he sent his son to go and study law in America. By the time the son was leaving Kenya, there was a case, a file case. After he came back 10 years down the line to Kenya, he realized the same file was there. And he asked the father, "Father, why don't you conclude this case?" And the father said, "Son, you are foolish. Without this file, you would not have gone to America." Don't we have the same thing, Mr. Speaker, in these many cases that exist? Mr. Speaker, the other bit that is of great concern to this particular organization is the appointment of accounting officers. You realize an officer acts for 5, like now, the Kura guy who was confirmed the other day, he was acting for 5 good years. That denies that officer a fair judgment, that denies the right to think, the right to be independent, and therefore it is high time that also the appointing authorities realize that appointment to some of these key positions must be expedited so that these people can act independently. Because the moment you're acting, it's like you're not sure whether the next minute you'll be in office or somebody else will be brought in acting capacity, and therefore you have to guard against, or everything that you do must be in conformity with the person who has given you that acting status. And Mr. Speaker, this is one thing that we can put our foot down, because right now we have so many regulations, and I know the time is too short, maybe you'll give me 2 more minutes. This is one area that really, Mr. Speaker, we need to address, because it has always been the case. Mr. Speaker, the other bit is the issue of financial performance and stability of the state corporations. This again in line with, do we need to have state corporations that do not add value to the public interest? Mr. Speaker, can I?
No, you are the ones who passed these timelines. 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the other bit is delay of documentation of audit. Again, the Auditor General Office is one of the constitutional offices that deal with this. We need to complain. Mr. Speaker, the other one is the issue of unqualified accounts. I know there are some corporations that have done very well, but Mr. Speaker, in general, the essence why the framers of the current constitution or our forefathers came up with this particular, and why in Kenya we have this special group called state corporation, is to add value to the public. And therefore, it's my appeal to the members of the committee to ensure that the existence of this state corporation add value to the well-being of the people of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A very important point that you raised, particularly the second last, and the chairman of the committee is here, and I can see a few more members. There should be no situation where a CEO of a state corporation can act in excess of 6 months. And if there's any corporation that you think they are acting CEOs, you better call the appointing authorities to come and appear before you and explain why that should be so. There's no reason. Because as the Honorable Kenan has rightly pointed out, I know he's chaired that committee for the last 5 years. You know, that is the part of the problems, that you have so many things happening and you can't quite explain. Because people are kept in acting positions for so long. Then if somebody has been acting for 3 years and they are appointed to serve for 3 years, so they have served for 6 years. But the first 3 years, they didn't know whether they were animals or birds. So they were just somewhere there. So please, Chairman, take up that matter. That challenge by the Honorable Kenan is a valid one. Member for Funyula.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to give me a chance to contribute on this report. I wholly support the report and thank the chair of the committee for the splendid job together with the members and the secretariat. It's never easy to have such a detailed report in view of the challenges that we have. I hope the Almighty God will grant him his wishes in future endeavors. Honorable Speaker, just want to point out a few issues, and let me start with the issue of land ownership and documentation. It is inconceivable that this time and era that a state corporation can allegedly have a parcel of land or property where they have got no valid title. The Land Registration Act is explicitly clear on what constitutes a prima facie evidence of ownership of a property. That's the land title or the deed title or certificate of lease. Indeed, failure by the state corporation to get those particular documentation would be termed as a dereliction of duty, and so we mean during when they are evaluating their performance, they should be given 0, and probably at the time of renewal of their contract, they should not be allowed to renew the contract. Honorable Speaker, I want to turn my attention to a very fundamental issue, and many of us have questioned this matter continuously and instantly. A state corporation, or a parastatal as we know it today, was basically designed to be a self-sustaining organization, was designed to contribute to the economy of this country, was designed to contribute to the exchequer. I see a footnote in the report, and I want to read it verbatim, that further it was observed that state corporations over-relied on government grants for continued operations other than enhancing internally generated funds, raising doubts on their capability as going concern in the absence of support from the National Treasury. Honestly, Honorable Speaker, it is unfair to the people of Kenya for their taxes to be used to run what will more or less look like a private entity. I'm aware there has been a lot of efforts in the office of the President to try and reorganize these state corporations. And I would add the executive to hasten the process and reorganize and review these state corporations so that we only retain those ones that are sustainable and that contribute something useful to the exchequer. It is a failure, as a business failure, as a manager, to operate on a deficit year in, year out, yet to have all that it requires for you to deliver on what you have to. Therefore, like in the private sector, if you don't make profits, as a CEO, you know the best way is the door, the exit door. So I would want to urge the government and those CSS, cabinet secretaries, that oversee these state departments, to apply pressure on these parastatals to ensure that they become profitable, they stop and cease depending on the National Treasury for survival. Honorable Speaker, I sit in the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperative, and we have made it very clear to the various agencies that we oversight, especially the parastatals, that we are not going to entertain further injection of public funds into their daily operation unless it's for a specific development project that has got a higher multiplier effect on the economy of this country. Finally, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of procurement. Indeed, the Public Procurement Disposal Act is very clear. Variation should never exceed 25% of the initial contract sum. I can't understand how any state corporation can allow for a project to exceed 25%. We can only read that there's a very clear attempt to gain unlawfully from public funds through variations in order to benefit personally. Secondly, the issue of time overruns. A properly planned project should not have a more than 10% time overrun based on the work plan agreed upon at the tendering process or planning. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Undo. In fact, it is good that you have said the things that you have said, and in consideration of the Speaker's earlier direction for a reconsideration of public participation for the Kenya Airways issue, it is hoped that that committee would also have an opportunity to look at the financial statements of Kenya Airways from the CEOs for the past 5 years, so that the House will be properly informed when it is considering that report, along with your contributions. We shall have contributions from the Honorable Thuku Kwenya, member for Kinangop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion and this report that emanated from our committee, Public Investments Committee. And from the onset, I want to thank our able chair, the Honorable Nasir. We are praying that by God's grace he wins the position of the governor of Mombasa when time comes because of his competence. Mr. Speaker, we have been able to go through several reports and audit reports that in that case of various parastatals. And Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have rightly stated, we found out that there are some issues that are outstanding in all audit reports, the issues to do with land, procurement, and bureaucracies in terms of implementation of decisions that are made. And Mr. Speaker, I have singled out a few parastatals that I would want to speak on, starting with Kenya Airports Authority, where it's one of the parastatals that is eliciting a lot of reactions and debate from even members because of the proposed takeover or merger of KAA and Kenya Airports Authority. And there are several issues that I would want to bring to the fore, especially the issue of land, because you find that, Mr. Speaker...
The Honorable Chepkut, just hold on, the Honorable Kwenya. The Honorable Chepkut, you have been observant of the House rules. Crossing the floor in the manner that you did earlier to speak to the Honorable Nasir is not the proper way. But next time, do it correctly. Observe the rules of the House. Proceed, the Honorable Kwenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was saying that the Kenya Airports Authority has a lot of issues to do with land, whereby they have land and they do not have title deeds. And it becomes so difficult when it comes to their financial reporting, because they will have to give the actual value of land or properties that they own. And therefore, it came out clearly that it is so difficult to give a clear valuation report on the property that is owned by Kenya Airports Authority. And therefore, as much as we do not want to preempt debate on the envisaged or the proposed merger, it will be so difficult for takeover to happen when for sure we do not know the exact value of land that is owned by Kenya Airports Authority. Mr. Speaker, we also found out that Kenya Airports Authority is have this habit of procuring so many projects, yet most of them are incomplete. And the question that begs is, do they procure just for the heck of the heck of it, and then have the same as incomplete projects after contractors have been paid part of their money, and therefore the same ends up in a lot of arbitration. We also looked at the reports of Kenya Pipeline Company, and Mr. Speaker, something that touched us and actually that brought us to so many questions is the issue of compensation of contractors, especially the one that was doing line 5 from Mombasa to Nairobi, whereby a certain contractor was contracted, that is Zakem International, and there came up a claim where he was supposed to be paid some monies. And what really struck us is that the kind of money that was claimed and the recommendations thereof, and the many consultations that were made, a decision was made that the contractor be paid his money. The same escalated to court of law because the company could not pay. And then from the media today, I can tell you for sure, Mr. Speaker, the same amount was given to the contractor. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, just for purposes of record, the other one is KCC, whereby Kenya Cooperative Creameries buys milk from farmers. This is a parastatal that needs to be protected, so that then the unfair competition is not brought by private processors. The government of Kenya needs to put money to KCC so that then it is seen to be a regulator or a stabilizer of the market to protect farmers from the losses that they have been incurring over time. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I just wish that we adopt this report because I support it. It's a report that is going to be a game changer in the way that parastatals do their job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Quite understandable. The Honorable Kwenya, coming from Kinangop, where milk producers, of course, have got a deep interest in KCC. Well spoken. The Honorable Buyu Akinye, member for Kisumu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. But, Mr. Speaker, I opt to pass this chance to another member as I wait for the next motion. Thank you.
Very well, very well, very well. We shall then have the Honorable Ibrahim Abdisalam, member for Wajir North. He had already spoken to it. Very well. The next on my list is the Honorable Were Ongondo, member for Kasipul.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to request to allow me to speak on item 10, motion 10.
Very well, the Honorable Were. The next one on my list is the Honorable Babu Ongeli, member for Embakasi East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report, the 23rd report of the Public Investment Committee on the audited financial statements of state corporation, and the committee which is chaired by the indomitable, the indefatigable, the lion-hearted, the fearless, the courageous member of Parliament from Vita constituency, Honorable Abdul Swamad, who doubles to be the next governor of Mombasa County. May God's will be done. Mr. Speaker, on this, we came up with certain observations in our committee, and number one, we saw that there are delays in availing documents to the Auditor General. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we know, one of the maxims of equity states that delay defeats equity. Therefore, we urge the CEOs to comply with the provisions of Section 68, subsection 2 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 to ensure that they act with Godspeed to present the documents that will be helpful in our investigation. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the procurement process is so much flawed, and we know that when it's flawed, Mr. Speaker, it is against the Public Procurement Assets and Disposal Act. And Mr. Speaker, this leads to inflation of projects' costs, and it can also lead to delay in completion of the said projects. Mr. Speaker, the third issue is about the court matters. In the court, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of delays, and therefore there should be fast expedition of cases in court. And number two, the CEOs, before taking matters before a court of law, before involving themselves in litigation, they should embrace the ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanisms, which is enshrined in Article 159 of the 2010 Kenyan Constitution, which is the apex of the law in this land, and whoever goes against that apex of the law becomes inconsistent and repugnant to the natural laws and justice. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is about the ownership of property and land. And in this, Mr. Speaker, we noted that most state corporations, they don't possess title deeds. And as a result, this leads to most of these state corporations not coming up with projects, because you cannot start a project on a land that does not belong to you, Mr. Speaker. And lastly is about the financial performance. Mr. Speaker, most of these state corporations, they are limping financially. And without the help of the national government, they don't have the internal generated funds that can help them at least fund their projects. And as a result, very soon, Mr. Speaker, most of these state corporations will be insolvent. And Mr. Speaker, with that, I rest my case and support with all my body parts and organs. Thank you.
The Honorable Babu, the member for Embakasi East, is always an interesting one to listen to. The Honorable Milemba Omboko is in the house. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance. For giving me this chance, and I want to fully support this report by the committee, and also thank the chairman, and of course, like the member for Embakasi did state, this is a very strong member of parliament from Vita, and I hear that he has interest there. We wish him well if he has to become the governor. This report is so strong, Honorable Speaker, and maybe it just shows the quality of person he is. Honorable Speaker, I begin by stating the original reason why state corporations were created, sometimes called the parastatals. They were created specifically, among other things, to fit in places where the individual or the private businesses could not fit in. And therefore, it was very important the government comes in to take care of those areas. Honorable Speaker, with time, the economy did expand when we got independence. And there are very many areas that currently now, the private enterprises are doing far much better than even the state corporations. And therefore, they become now irrelevant, and it's high time that some of them be audited thoroughly, so that with an intention of actually facing those that cannot sustain themselves out, are also facing those whom the private entrepreneurs have taken over, like in the case of supermarkets. Originally, no individual Kenyan was able to invest in supermarkets strongly, but with time they have come in, and the state corporations in areas of marketing and trading become irrelevant. So this report is timely. and should be pushed to the very end so that we sieve out the state corporations that are now have remained only to suck the government exchequer money instead of making profits. They have outlived their importance. And that is why this report becomes very, very important. Of course, there are few that must remain even when they are making no profit, Honorable Speaker, because they may be touching in an area that is important for the nation. And I would be quick to give an example like Kenya Railways, for instance, because it touches on lives of many people and the interests are wide and far. But that can remain to the economists of the time. Honorable Speaker, I would specifically want to speak on land, because these state corporations have a lot of land, and like it has been indicated, some of that land doesn't have title deeds. And it has become a sieving point for those who are corrupt within government to actually take that land away. And that is why positions on state corporation leadership becomes very, very interestingly competed for and sometimes tribalized. And sometimes you'll find they're acting for a very long time. It's because of interests. So the faster we adopt this report and is acted upon, the better. So that when you are dealing with a state corporation, you also value the land it has. Because currently you will hear that we want to privatize. Yes, I support that when it comes. But are you privatizing including the value of the land that these state corporations do have? Honorable Speaker, a more touchy one to me is one that has been mentioned here called Mutiani House. Honorable Speaker, Mutiani House has been built for all the years. The estimate cost was supposed to have been 200 million only. Tonight, as we speak, Honorable Speaker, Mutiani House has taken about 1.8 billion Kenya shillings that can never get finished. Each time there's an aspect of finishing Mutiani House, the matter is taken to court, and I'm happy the report brings out the issue, the relationship between the court cases and the state corporation. Honorable Speaker, those state court cases is an avenue of actually fleecing more and more of the monies through the state corporations. And I want to state, Honorable Speaker, because my time is out, that this is a very good report and I fully support it. Thank you for giving me this chance.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Member for Emuhaya. The issue of land is very, very interesting in these state corporations. It is true, I've heard of a case where one state corporation was privatized and sold for about 900 million. And the person who took it up only sold 3 houses that state corporation had here in Robi and recovered 1.2 million before he did anything else. It's very interesting. The Honorable Wanga Nyasuna, member for Homa Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this report of the Public Investments Committee. Mr. Speaker, before I left on promotion to chair the Finance Committee, where you're a very strong member, I served in the Public Investment Committee, and I'd like to commend our chairman, Honorable Abdul Samad Sharif Nasir. And if the diligence with which he serves the PIC is utilized by the people of Mombasa when he becomes governor, then Mombasa will continue to rise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me, Mr. Speaker, let me state that as Parliament, when we look at these reports of the Audit Committee, apart from the recommendations to other institutions to perform certain things, we must also look inward. What is it that Parliament can do to improve the systems so that we do not have these audit queries year after year, because we are the body charged with legislation, Mr. Speaker. So we must also look at what legislation can we tighten so that we are not year in, year out dealing with procurement issues, dealing with issues remaining in court, dealing with issues of these reports of the audit committees of this House not being implemented to the letter, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the first thing I'd like to state is the Office of the Auditor General is severely under-resourced. When you ask, for example, for a special audit, and we have asked, there were issues of the hydrant valves, for example, at Kenya Pipeline. When you ask for a special audit, the Auditor General takes so long. By the time the special audit comes, the matter was long overtaken by events. The person had been arrested, charged, is away. Now, even if you call them to come and answer questions, they can even refuse to come because it's no longer a matter of priority to them. So I think the matter of resourcing the Office of the Auditor General adequately is should be a very, very serious priority for this House, just so that the Auditor General can operate at optimum capacity. Mr. Speaker, you find that when you look at the Auditor General's reports, you find organizations that have so many audit queries, and one has been given as an example here, the Kenya Airports Authority. Just incomplete projects, Mr. Speaker, Ukunda airstrip fencing, Embakasi fencing project, construction of Terminal 4, building, parking garage, grade parking, construction of fire station at Wilson Airport, construction, and these are some of these parastatals. As a country, we said we even want to bring expatriates to head them. Expatriates are overrated, Mr. Speaker. When you put them there to now run a Kenyan institution properly and make it efficient, sometimes it does not produce results. And this must be noted, that we can have homegrown talent that is good, that can drive institutions to the place they need to be. If you look even at Kabunde Airport, International Airport in Homa Bay, it has been, pending for the longest time, just because Kenya Airports Authority cannot work with the Land Commission quickly to compensate, the owners of the land, so that we can have a proper runway built at Kabunde, Mr. Speaker. And that is our international airport as the people of Homa Bay. And we would like it to be completed so that we are able to land large Embraers in the county of choice. Mr. Speaker, I also would like to make a comment on the issue of who follows up the implementation of these recommendations. Who follows up that implementation? And we need to put it in law that if an accounting officer does not implement recommendations of an audit committee report like this one, that accounting officer should be held responsible. So, Mr. Speaker, in the Committee of Finance, we will be discussing to bring amendments to the Public Audit Act so that we put it in law that there will be punishment for accounting officers that do not implement recommendations of PIC and PAC. Mr. Speaker, finally, the timelines for audit, because a lot has been said here about delay by organizations in submitting, or parastatals in submitting their financial accounts to the Auditor General for purposes of audit. We should also look at that so that we reduce it from 3 months after the end of the financial.
The Honorable Wanga. All right. Half a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we reduced it from 3 months to the end of the financial year to just 1 month after the end of the financial year, the auditor would have enough time to audit and then give us reports in good time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Wanga, the future definitely belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So when you say that you would like to have embryos, large ones, landing at Sune, is it Suneka? Kabune, in the Homa Bay, we can only pray and hope that your dreams also will become a reality. So we pray for the Honorable Nasir, that all of you seem to be praying for him for greater things in future. We hope that his dreams will see reality. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Rasul Ali, member for Saku.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, I want to thank the chairman, my brother Abdul Samad. I think looking at this report, I always find him he's a stickler for the best things, I think, that he does. And that is the finest thing we expect of all our chairmen. As you proceed to Mombasa, I think as committees, we normally visit Mombasa also in our free time. with your leadership, it's going to be a different Mombasa. We are going to hold you to that. Honorable Speaker, I support this report. For one, I think the report is well written and it's really very comprehensive. I'm also really interested with this report because all these institutions that are funded directly or indirectly by the National Treasury, in one way or another, they are expected to generate their own funds to be able to carry out their operations. But as it were, some of what the committee has highlighted in the report is things like the state corporation undertook procurement processes irregularly, contrary to the provisions of Public Procurement Act. Mr. Speaker, in this country, one of the problems we are experiencing is in procurement across government, where it is the source of corruption, is the source of pilferage, and it is the source of failure of project completion in time. Mr. Speaker, the other point is delayed contract and variation of cost. I think this is really important, and some of my colleagues who have spoken before me have alluded to this fact. Some of these projects that have been tied to a timeline, that the cost to an extent is capped. But what the contractors will tend to do is to delay so that there is variation of cost. At the end, it will cost more to the taxpayer. And I think it's important that PIC has picked up this so that we try to maintain the project on the rail that says what is the estimated time of completion. Honorable Speaker, the issue of land, I think, is really important. Land is capital. It is a factor of production. When you do not hold any document that tells you this land belongs to you, I think then it gives this institution a very fickle ground on which they stand. And for that reason, I think we must put some sort of moratorium on these parastatals to actually make sure that the land that they own documents along with. That is why more often they are in court, because they are in dispute with the citizens of this country. Honorable Speaker, matters pending in court, I think this also has been spoken to. But they say justice delayed is justice denied. Once a project is delayed, of course, one of the things that makes this project to be delayed is it is pulled through the court. It has cost implication. But the best thing to do is, most of the time, once the institution and the contractor and the Office of the Auditor General confirms, then they can arbitrate and it can be taken out of court. Finally, Honorable Speaker, is the matter of the Office of Auditor General. I think this office is very important. And for PIC to be able to effectively carry out its duties, this office should be funded and it must be well manned.
Very well. The Honorable Kamene Joyce, member for Machakos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to air my views on the following report. First is to thank the chair and the entire committee for a job well done and for coming out with this comprehensive report. about our parastatals or the state corporations. Mr. Speaker, the biggest issue here is about the implementation of this report, and more so when it comes to the issue of issuing the title deeds. We know there is a lot of land grabbing in current times, and it would be very good if each parastatal was able to acquire the title deeds and have them in their possession. The other issue is on the procurement. The procurements should be made in accordance with the regulations, and also make sure that there's no mischief or embezzlement of public funds on the following issues. Mr. Speaker, with this, I beg to thank the committee and also support this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, member for Ndaragwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, fully aware that the campaigns for 2022 have not begun, I totally refuse to say that the Honorable Member for Muvita is capable of managing the affairs of Mombasa, because the campaigns have not begun. So I'm not saying it, Mr. Speaker, even if he is capable, it is not. I'm not saying that he is capable, but I know he is totally capable, and I refuse to say it. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this report by saying that I think one of the other things that, among other many things that members have said, I think Mr. Nasir should encourage Parliament to resume sittings in Mombasa for the retreat, and not for anything else, but to rejuvenate the economy of Mombasa. Mr. Speaker, I have heard members speak to the issues of procurement, the issues of the Office of the Auditor General, and there are 10 recommendations that have been made by this committee under the leadership of Mheshimiwa Nasir, and good recommendations, Mr. Speaker. There is need for the parastatals to ensure that land under them or they own is registered in their names to avoid encroachment. There is need to ensure that procurement processes are being followed properly. Mr. Speaker, there is a new area that is being used by these parastatals, and I believe also by the county government, to freeze the public of their resources, and that is in fencing. I see a lot of fencing of public facilities, and it is good, because in so doing, you are indicating ownership. But when you undertake fencing on land that is already disputed, land that is in court, you are awarding contracts with, certainly with a mind that they will not be done, and you again expose yourself to loss of money, perhaps deliberately, as other times not so. I think it is important that they pay attention to that. The issue of delaying in appointment of accounting officer to even beyond 2 years, again, another unacceptable behavior by these parastatals. But Mr. Speaker, let me say what I think also, perhaps going forward, how the committee can improve their report. They have very good recommendations, and all these offices have human faces. Those who failed to do what was expected of them by the specific acts, by the Constitution, by the Leadership and Integrity Act, by the Mwongozo document. And I think the committee should go to the point of culling those names in the report. The fear of a public officer being mentioned adversely in a parliamentary document would certainly move the officers to doing what is already expected or implementing what has already been called upon by these reports. But mentioning the parastatal without bringing the name of the officer who failed to do that specific exercise, again, you don't call for the implementation. I say this because we have our implementation committee, and we know they are trying their best, but Parliament is always inhibited in the fact that they cannot move to the next phase of perhaps suing, or ours is oversight and recommendation. And there is a law that requires that, or provides that once mentioned adversely in any public report, and especially parliamentary reports, then you may be debarred from carrying out some specific duties in the coming days. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important that in the coming reports, let's have names of individuals who have failed or who need to be investigated further. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I think it's also important that the committee, and I know it may be falling under other committees, I was looking for their thoughts on the proposed merger of parastatals. Is this something that should continue being pursued? That is thoughts that are in other quarters. I thought perhaps the committee will have exercised their mind on the issue also to ensure that they are viable and useful to this republic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Odhiambo Akoth, member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, unlike my friend Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who is waiting for 2022 to declare competence or otherwise of the chair, I hereby declare that I've worked with the chair for a long time, and I know he's extremely competent, even to serve as governor, and I'm not under any duress to say so. He's done very well as the chair, and he has done extremely well also as the MP. That's why he's actually been given the second chance. Mr. Speaker, may I congratulate the chairman and the committee for this good job. And I'll just say, make a brief comments, Mr. Speaker. The report looks at 48 state corporations, and they've done their best in terms of looking at the corporations and the accounting issues. Mr. Speaker, there were just some issues that were standing out, some which other members have spoken to. One on the issue of the need for titles for state corporations. Mr. Speaker, this is a very big problem in the country, not just touching on state corporations, but also touching on other lands, public lands. Mr. Speaker, when I got in as Member of Parliament for Suba North, the largest public primary school in my constituency was about to be sold. The matter had already gone to court because the person who had originally sold the land, there was no documentation, and over years, people tend to change their minds, and that's happening all over. And because there was no further money to be given, they were selling the largest school. So we had to quickly come in and redeem the school at 2 million Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. But one of the things I've noticed, because it's a present problem even in my constituency now, that even where you get the title deeds, first even the process of getting those title deeds, who actually does it, who is mandated to do it? But even when you do get the title deeds, who actually takes the physical or secures the document physically? And Mr. Speaker, what then that happens is that if it is a school, it is left with the headmaster or the principal. And if you find a person without integrity, then they can still go ahead and try and compromise lands and sell this, or they can lose it, so that these same people go back again and seek the same title. And Mr. Speaker, I would want to encourage this committee to bring a legal amendment so that we have a repository of state titles, because we don't currently have a body that is a repository for state titles, and not just for these corporations, but for any state entity. If I have a title as Honorable Millie Odhiambo, I know where I keep it in my house. But where do we keep it? If a school burns, for instance, how do we, who has that physical title? I think that is something that they need to look at. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, that I picked up is again, I think Honorable Jeremiah noticed this, and I also picked it up, that the committee did a good job by actually mentioning that the CEOs should be held personally accountable where the government money is lost. But I was hoping the committee could have been brave enough to hold people personally accountable by naming them. Because when you name people individually, then most of them are very scared. And then it kind of increases accountability. So I'm encouraging the committee that in future we need to do this. The other issue that I've seen that is of concern to me, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of squatters, that you can actually see the history of this. I had so much, Mr. Speaker, I'm seeing I'm running out of time. But the issue of squatters, if you actually look at this, that we always have squatters that begin, they don't come in drafts. It's usually one person, and then they multiply. And using the broken window concept, Mr. Speaker, that's how they actually come in, because when they see nobody chasing them. So we need to be also serious as a government that whenever we have one person invading public land, we don't need to wait and then we chase them and then the government looks bad when you're actually in government land. So what we need to do is to stop people even squatting on that land to begin with. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that is of concern to me that I've also...
The Honorable, you have very interesting points. I'll allow you another 1 minute to wind up.
Thank you, Chair, for indulging me. Mr. Speaker, I'll be very fast. That the other issue of concern to me is the issue of commingling of funds, that we must also find a way of dealing. Like I can give an example that when you see now, when you have different entities that are dealing with the government funds, we have counties, we have CDF, we have these corporations. If one has started to build on something, like our counties are very notorious, they find that it's almost complete, it's been abandoned 10 years, they come in, Mr. Speaker, they complete it. The original building maybe has been done at 20 million. They put in 50 million in paper when it's actually 1 million. And then we end up losing a lot of money. Again, we need actually a legal framework for dealing with the double funding where you have more than 2 entities doing this. Mr. Speaker, because of time, I'll stop at that, but I think I'll give my written comments to the committee, especially on legal frameworks about things that we can do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Millie Odhiambo, I think the most interesting thing I've heard from you is in regard to the titles to public land owned by public entities, and that we should have public repositories, the offices of repositories, registers for repository of these kind of titles. I think this is an idea that you should run with. You should not wait for this particular committee to take it up, but it is a good idea that I would be glad to associate myself with you so that we come up and improve the state of this particular matter for titles for public land in this country. I'm excited by it. Yes, I will be willing to follow up.
It's something that we can work with you on, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. We shall have a contribution from the Honorable Nyikal. The Honorable Nyikal, member for Seme. Oh, you had contributed. The Honorable Mwashetani, had you contributed to this? Please do.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kunipa fursa hii kuweza kuchangia katika ripoti hii iliyoletwa na Mheshimiwa Sharif Nasiri ama Abdul Samad. Kwanza kabisa, Mheshimiwa Spika, niko na bahati kuwa Sharif Nasiri tulikuwa tusoma naye darasa moja. Na mimi nimebahatika kuwa naye bunge, kuchaguliwa kwa mara ya pili. Kwa hivyo kazi yake mimi naielewa, na mimi kikweli kweli naona natosha kwa uwezo wa Mwenyezi Mungu kuwa governor Mombasa. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukaguzi huu wa hesabu ni ukaguzi ambao sisi kama wabunge ni muhimu kuangalia sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, kulingana na sheria ya Kenya, yeyote ambaye ana haki ya sehemu yoyote ama shamba lolote ni paka awe hati miliki. Lakini ni jambo la kushangaza tukiangalia katika mtiririko wa habari hii ni kuwa mashirika mengi ya serikali hayana hati miliki. Ni kumaanisha, Mheshimiwa Spika, mgogoro ambao imekuwepo nikiwa katika kamati ya mashamba, tumeletewa masuala mengi ama migogoro mingi kuhusu baina ya wananchi na mashirika ya serikali. Na huu mgogoro, Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeweza kutatua kwa kuita wizara ya mashamba na kuipa kauli mbiu kuwa kuna haja ya kuzunguka na kuhakikisha mashirika ya kiserikali yamepata hati miliki. Lakini kama inavyozungumzwa kuwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi wabunge tunajinyima wenyewe nguvu, kwa sababu zile nguvu ambazo tuko nazo za kikatiba ya kuwa ripoti yoyote inayopitishwa na bunge hili ni wale ambao wanatakikana kuikamilisha wakamilishe, lakini kwa sababu hatuna mipango msingi ama hatuna mielekeo msingi, ni kuwa ripoti nyingi tukipitisha katika bunge hili, Mheshimiwa Spika, zinapatikana katika mashelfu ama katika mameza zile ambazo ni za wale wahusika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia kwa upande wa equalization funds zile ambazo zimekuwa zikitolewa kwa sababu ya kuleta usawa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kama sehemu ile ninaowakilisha, kuna uwekezaji ambao umetumika na pesa za serikali kuchimba visima zaidi, visima karibu visita. Visima vile, Mheshimiwa Spika, vimesimama kwa sababu yule ambaye alikuwa ni kiongozi ama CEO wa shirika lile la maji aliondoka, kaja mwingine. Alipoondoka kuingia mwingine, yule mwingine ameshindwa kukamilisha pale ambapo pesa za serikali ama pesa za umma zimetumika. Ukamilishaji wa miradi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni muhimu, na sisi kama wabunge tumepewa nguvu nyingi ya kuwa tunawakilisha wale wananchi. Sisi 290 tukija hapa tuko na masuala ambayo yanawakilisha wananchi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, kauli mbiu inayotoka katika bunge hili ni kauli ambayo yatakana ipatiwe uzito, kwa sababu bila uzito tutakuwa tukileta ripoti nyingi. Tumeleta ripoti ya mashamba, ya kuwa kuna mashamba ambayo yanachukuliwa na mashirika mbalimbali kiolela olela. Tumeleta waheshimiwa wengine wameleta masuala ya mashamba kuhusu wananchi wao vile wanavyopelekwa mbio, lakini wakati tukileta ripoti ndiyo inakubalika, inapitishwa, lakini haipatiwi uzito. Kwa yote yale ambayo yamepitishwa katika ripoti hii na mheshimiwa na kamati yake Sharifu Nasiri, ni kumaanisha kuwa ni yafuatilizwe, yaangaliwe, yaweze kukamilishwa. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, bila kufuata, kwa sababu hata ile kamati ya implementation committee haina nguvu nyingi. Ile nguvu imepatiwa, lakini zile nguvu hazikamilishi masuala kama haya. Ukiangalia katiba inasema wazi, Kiingereza inasema kuwa sisi kama wabunge tuko na nguvu Kiingereza kuresolve na kudeliberate. To deliberate and resolving. Kuresolve kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ya haraka ni kukamilisha swala lile linaloletwa kwenye bunge hili. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiweza kuweka mikakati ya kisawasawa ya kuwa jambo lolote linalopitishwa na bunge hili linakamilishwa, basi ripoti nyingi ambazo zimekuja hapa zinaweza kukamilishwa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mkono ripoti hii na nashukuru kwa kunipa fursa hii. Asante sana.
Honorable Meli.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this report, the 23rd report of the Public Investment Committee. And Madam Speaker, I want to commend the chair and the members for this report. I want to say that the work that has been put forth by the committee is quite commendable. And I want to say that the mandate of this committee is actually manifested in the report. It shows the abilities and the leadership of the chair of that particular committee, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this has actually shown the way forward for all state corporations. And I want to say that even the Inspector of State Corporations and even the National Treasury, which is actually the body that is in charge of most of the state corporations, or the sector that is in charge of most of the state corporations, should actually take this report and be part of its handbook on how to oversight some of the state corporations that have issues. I want to say that, as a member of this committee, I want to say that this report has actually been meticulously written and a number of issues have come up. Madam Speaker, I don't want to really go into a lot of issues that other members have talked about, but I want to talk about a number of issues that concerns observations and recommendations. Madam Speaker, you'll realize that the activities of this Parliament are very active in committees. It is in committees that Parliament is able to oversight government and the executive. It is in the committees that they make a lot of deliberations concerning various sectors of government and even the society. But I really want to talk only about the issues of ownership. Madam Speaker, land is a very emotive issue in this country. You'll realize that a number of state corporations, mostly universities, research facilities, have land that they do not own. They have no ownership document. And I think our earlier speakers have talked about that. But we also have equipments that have been inherited by some of the state corporations from other corporations and they don't own it. We have in question a number of universities that have actually inherited land, inherited equipment, inherited buildings, and many others, and they do not actually have even the titles, the logbooks of the various vehicles and equipments. This is actually the lack of this, the lack of ownership of these equipments, of the legal documents, is going to open a way where some of these equipments can easily get lost. And the committee has made very good recommendations. And I want to say that there is need for follow-up on how these things can actually be secured. On another issue is the challenges facing most of the state corporations on procurements, controls, and management of management processes in most of those bodies. You realize that, Madam Speaker, most of the state corporations, others have actually do not follow the necessary procurement procedures as per the PFM Act. And even the Disposal Act, the Public Procurement Disposal Act of 2005, you realize that some have entered into contracts that at times have costed them a lot, has actually put them, has even caused the government to be surcharged and even earned a lot of have even been taken to court. Madam Speaker, there's also the delay in the appointment of the CEOs. A number of the CEOs, some of them have been very, very good, but they have been in captain capacity for many years, which in the right sense, if they could be confirmed, they could actually work very well. Madam Speaker, there is the issue of financial performance sustainability. Most of the state corporations depend on the national government, on funding. They have not decided to have their own way of generating income. And the recommendation and implementations of this recommendation by the committee need to be relooked into and actually be supported both by the implementation committee of this House and by the executive. I support, Madam.
We have 1 minute to go, and I'll give this to Honorable Nyikal. The Honorable Nyikal, you contributed already. Honorable Sahal Ibrahim? No, she's not interested. Honorable Osotsi Godfrey? Do you want to speak on this one? Okay, then it seems like there is no other member who intends to contribute on this one, and I'll go ahead to call the mover. I'll call upon the mover to reply. Honorable Nasir.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to first and foremost, on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Mvita, to congratulate my colleagues, members of the Public Investment Committee, for being able to allow the stewardship, together with the Office of the Speaker and the clerk, and definitely the clerks who serve in our committee. It is no mean task coming up with a report of 48 state corporation, a very, very in-depth report, which is plus 600 pages. Madam Speaker, this report, I just want to give an overview, and I'm glad that so many members have been able to contribute on this. But this report talks about many things, issues to do with land ownership. And we have not been just on the reactive part, we have been on the proactive part. We have looked at this report, and when it comes to issues of land, given instructions and recommendations as to what needs to be done regarding land that has been purported to be grabbed. We have talked and even given instructions and directions on those individuals who have flouted procurement laws so that they can be able to enrich themselves. We have been able, Madam Speaker, on this report, save this country billions of shillings, which would have been paid out of interest due to neglect or purposely ensuring that contractors do not get paid on time or projects take too long to be able to complete. We have been able in this report to identify projects that have been incomplete and there have been, over the years, been milking stations of certain individuals, and we have been able to put a stop on it. Now, many members have been able to ask what next. And my message to the judiciary, to the National Land Commission, to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, to the DCI, in this report, we have been able to advise you on what needs to be done. We have been able to state who needs to be investigated, who needs to be charged, and in some cases even names have been talked about. And when you are told that a certain area smells of rotten fish, then the chances are that that area has rotten fish. To the executive, we want to work hand in hand to be able to make this country a better country. So to the executive, Madam Speaker, when we tell you that such a place is where it smells fresh flowers and fresh roses or fresh fruits, then there's a likelihood that that is where an orchard is, and that is where we need to invest for this country to be able to benefit. And I want to tell, if anything else, to say that this is a warning. I know many other entities have been able to talk about KEMSA legally as per the constitution of this country. It is this very house that can be able to audit KEMSA. And legally and constitutionally, it is this same very house, through this committee, that can be able to hold KEMSA accountable. So I want to tell those who felt that they can be able to enrich themselves, we are coming for you. We are coming for those who pilferaged in the name of ensuring that, food security is done. We are coming for you, those who are trying to pilferage in the name of roads. And I want to appeal to my colleagues. I know my time is up, and I want to thank everyone. The Vice Chair is here, who has been very, very keen, all the other members. But I want to ask my colleagues in the National Assembly, resort
wind up in a minute, Honorable Nasir.
I want to tell my colleagues in the National Assembly and those who are outside the National Assembly, the Constitution of this country has been able to allow us to deliberate and resolve issues in this very House, in the county assemblies, in the Senate. But the trend at which we are moving, Madam Speaker, to the level of insulting people's mothers in the auspices and in the disguise that that is politics, we are not going to get anywhere. If it is anything, this committee today, despite the handshake, we have been able to hold people accountable. This committee today and this very House, by every single one of you here supporting this report, we have been able to show that the Constitution of this country remains more supreme than abuses that are currently going on out there. And I want to urge my colleagues, we will not be able to grow by hurling insults at each other outside, but we will be able to grow by doing what necessarily needs to be done, and that is ensuring that we follow the law and the Constitution to the latter. Thank you very, very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank everyone. We do have another report, Madam Speaker, on the very, very floor of this House, and we'll be tabling some more very, very soon. Thank you very much.
We shall defer the putting of the question until when the motion comes back on the order paper. So let's move on to the next order.
Order number 9, motion, inquiry into the status of dams in Kenya. Resumption of debate.
Honorable members, we have a balance of 43 minutes. I have the list of the members who had made their contributions. I will not name them because I'll be eating into the 43 minutes, but the Honorable Tuitoek had a balance of 2 minutes. Is he here? Honorable Tuitoek? If the Honorable Tuitoek is not here, I'm going to give the Honorable Honorable Nyikal Wambora. Sorry, Nyikal Wambura, not Wambora.
Yes, Wambura, that's correct. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this report. And immediately, Madam Speaker, I'll say I support this report, but I also have an amendment that I would want to put immediately, and then proceed to give reasons for that amendment, and also give further discussion on the
Yes,
on the
of
report.
course, Honorable Nyikal.
Yes.
I had actually intended to let you come in immediately to prosecute your amendment, proposed amendment, so that we can try and make good use of the 43 minutes. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to make amendment to this motion, and as I said, I support the motion. It's a great work that has been done, but the motion that I intend to bring, the amendment that I intend to bring in, is on the recommendations, and I propose that the motion be amended by deletion of the word stop appearing after the words must forthwith in paragraph 180 of page 44 of the report, and substitute therefore with the word reassess. Madam Speaker, the reason for this, the committee has done a wonderful job, and they have made very many good recommendations. And even this recommendation 180 that, on paragraph 180 that I'm proposing to amend, it's also a fantastic recommendation. But it has one issue for which I'm amending it, and that is, Madam Speaker, if we say that all the projects that are in the process of procurement and planning must stop forthwith, pending appraisal, then, Madam Speaker, the experience is that when you do that, those projects actually die. what happens is that if the assessment is not done quickly and they have been stopped, then the legal issues that will come with it, that sometimes are actually very expensive, and the financial issues that come with it. So if you're not careful and we just blanket stop all of them, one, we may run into those legal issues, we may run into those financial issues, and many contractors have used that to actually make a lot of money where they didn't do any work at all. The second reason, Madam Speaker, is that when you take projects, particularly government projects, whether funded by government or funded by donors, and you stop them while you are starting a process, what happens is that the projects are likely to die because the funds that are put aside are now open to be used elsewhere. So if you had money put for a project, you now stop the procurement, that money now is open and can be used elsewhere. And what happens in many cases is that these projects die. The third reason why I want that amendment, Madam Speaker, is when you do that, you will find that the officers actually now lose interest in the projects. They don't follow them up. The whole process has been stopped, and there's a delay. And in the end, what happens is that again the projects die. Mr. Speaker, the committee went through and actually visited eight dams, and they have come out with, they have done fantastic work. But, Madam Speaker, they have indicated and they have given recommendations for what should be done for each dam where it has stopped. And therefore, my fear is that if you then go and make this recommendation, then it almost nullifies the recommendations they have put in place, which is now indicating what should be done so that the projects go forward. Madam Speaker, their purpose, I believe, was not to stop the projects, but actually to get them done in a proper way, due diligence, so that we get value for money. And for that reason, I think removing the word stop and replacing with the word reassess now actually make sure that the process will go, the projects will go on, but all the process of procurement will be reassessed. I repeat, if we use the word stop, the chances that these projects will never go on are actually there. And as I always say, we should not actually kill.
Okay, 1 minute, Honorable Nyikal.
Yeah, we shouldn't actually kill projects just because some people have done a bad job, but what we should do is reassess the projects so that they go on and people get benefit for money, and so that the planned development in those areas can proceed. With that, Madam Speaker, I support this report, and once again I say it's a very, very great report they have done, but with that amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'll ask Mheshimiwa Buyu to second.
Who is that? Who are you? Who is seconding you?
Mheshimiwa Buyu.
Okay, Honorable Buyu.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity, Madam Speaker. And from the onset, I'd like to say that I'm a member of this committee, and I'd like to second that amendment because, in effect, or essentially, it does not alter the motive or the intention of the committee. When the committee said stop any procurement process that's ongoing, what the committee intended to cure was any anomalies that might have been committed. And to use the word reassess instead of stop still gives the contract or the jobs an opportunity to be looked into again. In case there's any problem with procurement, there is still a remedy that can be taken. So with that, I support that amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable members, I go on to propose the question, which is that the motion be amended by inserting the following words after the figure 2019, which is subject to deletion of the word stop appearing after the words must forthwith in paragraph 180 on page 44 of the report, and substitution thereof with the word reassess. Honorable members, now you will be speaking to the amendment as moved by the Honorable Nyikal. So, the Honorable Mbiuki Kareke.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the amendment as proposed by the Honorable James Nyikal, and really say that, Madam Speaker, the intention of the committee was not to gang or to stop all the projects which are under procurement, Madam Speaker. Rather, Madam Speaker, as a committee, we observed that there is a procurement process, or there is a financing project called ECPF, which, Madam Speaker, has been subject of abuse by the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the amendment proposed by Dr. Nyikal, which is to replace the word stop by reassess, Madam Speaker, as a committee, we wish to say that it is accommodative. It will be able to give the ministry a leverage to reassess all the ongoing projects which are under procurement, and it does not really, Madam Speaker, affect the spirit of the committee. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support the amendment on behalf of the committee. Thank you.
Now, I want to know who it is. I see Honorable Kioni. You want to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity. I want to support that amendment, that it is important that when we are undertaking this kind of exercises, that when the intentions are good, like the ones we have for the committee, it is important not to open rooms for abuse. When you say that you want to get all the work done, redone, you have created a highway for those in the public service to again loot, do all the wrong things that they have done. But, Madam Speaker, in supporting this amendment, I think it would be more useful. I said it earlier in the other, when we were discussing the PIC report, that the committees will help us in a big way if, for example, they were to mention the specific officers who have caused this kind of turmoil to Kenyans. Why is it that we are reassessing? Who are the specific individuals? When we talk about institutions, it is again we are like going out there to cover up, to become part of the cover up. And I'm not saying that you have, I'm just suggesting of the way we should do these things in the future. That way Parliament becomes efficient, and members of the public will be fearful, including the members of the public service. They will be fearful of any exercise being done by the parliamentary committees. But when we come with a blanket condemnation, we have this institution, and every institution has a human face. And the law requires that if you have been mentioned adversely in any report that has been tabled in Parliament and accepted by Parliament, then there are institutions that there are places that you cannot, or advantages, privileges, opportunities that cannot be accorded to you going forward. That alone will make it necessary for any person who has this kind of responsibility, not embarrassing us. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I look at the dams. I'm happy that Pesi Dam, Keja Dam, and the other one we call Malewa Dam are not part of this exercise. But them not being part of it does not make us any happier in Nyandarua, because again we seem to have been left out of the loop. But it's good that they have not been mentioned adversely, but it is important, Madam Speaker, as members of Parliament, as parliamentary committees, we move that extra. No, that would be courageous enough to carry names of individuals who are misusing public resources into the reports, because that is the only way we can exercise proper oversight. Otherwise, our reports will continue looking like daily newspapers that you look at in the morning, and in the evening you are done away with. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I think with that contribution on the amendment,
we can go on to put the question on the amendment, and then we go into debating the substance of the motion, if that is okay with members. Okay, honorable members, I go on to put the question, which is that the motion be amended by inserting the following words after the figure 2019, subject to deletion of the word stop appearing after the words must forthwith in paragraph 180 on page 44 of the report, and substitution thereof with the word reassess. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Okay, honorable members, since the amendment has been carried, now let us go on to the debate of the report as amended. Honorable Osotsi Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this report. First, I will start by thanking the Committee of Environment and Natural Resources for this very, very strong report, and a report that many Kenyans have been waiting for. Madam Speaker, I'll go to some of the issues raised. The first issue is the issue that has been in our media for some time, the issue that has created a lot of anxiety in this country, and that issue is the issue of Itare Dam project. You are aware that there has been concern around the project contractor for this project, a company by the name CMCD Ravenna, that has had to go through bankruptcy proceedings in Italy. Madam Speaker, this is a major concern because public money is going to be lost as a result of lack of proper due diligence in the selection of a contractor for this project. Because if you go to Itare, there's a lot of equipment, very expensive equipment, into billions of shillings. Part of the plant has already been constructed, but now the contractor is not on site. He's facing bankruptcy proceedings in Italy. I think this is a serious matter, Madam Speaker, because we are even being told that the performance bond and even the advance payment guarantee is almost expiring. So who is going to pay for this wastage of billions of money? I think the committee should have gone further and reprimanded some people who are involved in this procurement for this project. The report is silent on that, because billions of taxpayers' money is going to be lost as a result of someone not having done his work right. Which brings us to the issue of how well is background checks done before a contractor is chosen for multi-billion project like this one. How is a continuous due diligence done even in the course of the project? I think this is one issue that as Parliament we will need to follow it up, and as a Vice Chair of Implementation Committee, I want to guarantee the House that we are going to take up this matter very seriously so that we go to the bottom of this issue. Madam Speaker, the next issue is the issue of land, which ties into project planning. Most of these dams, the project is planned, procured, and yet land is not secured. So when they start the project, they end up having issues, which delays the implementation of the project. And this is something that is affecting many, many other projects of this nature. The other very important issue is the involvement of locals in this project through, for example, utilization of local resources to build the project. And this report talks very well about Kiserian project, how it was done through utilization of local resources in that area. And it was done very well. But the other projects, you find that there is a lot of external
resources which are used, therefore leading to conflicts with the local community. The other point, Madam Speaker, is the model, the financing model for this project. I think we need to desist from financing model of EPCF, which is engineering, procurement, construction, and financing model. Because now we lose local content in such projects, and we end up having challenges like this, Madam Speaker. All in all, Madam Speaker, this report is good, but I agree with the report recommendation that the ministry should come up with a directorate on dam engineering so that it can guide this process, so that we ensure we have a proper technical diligence on all projects of this nature, so that we can get value for money for this project. Because when you bring in a contractor from outside, who
Honorable Kioni, unfortunately I cannot because the time is so limited and there are so many people who want to speak to it. Honorable Kioni, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, in support of this report, I want to point out or to re-emphasize what I had said, that it is important that when reports of this nature are tabled in Parliament, they carry names, so that even as we sit here, we know which officers are going to be punished for having misled the country into undertaking exercises that cannot be completed or which are not beneficial. Madam Speaker, I think that is the only way that Parliament will be felt by the executive or those whom we have the mandate to oversight. Secondly, Madam Speaker, is also to, as we commend the committee for the work done, it is important to mention that one of the biggest problems that seems to have hit all these dams is that the projects were conceived long before land had been acquired. And acquiring land in this country is certainly not an easy thing. We know now that land must be acquired by the National Land Commission, and it takes time. It's a costly exercise, and people have also ways of making it difficult to get the land acquired. And when it is not done properly and in good time, again, you create room and channels for money to be stolen or misused or misappropriated and taken elsewhere. The third thing, Madam Speaker, is that, again, it appears that the contractors have come up with a new way of freezing Kenyans, where you are awarded a contract, you can actually see that the project is not well thought out, so you sign into the contract, and from that point, you start suing the government, because they are either delaying in allowing the contract to start, or the contract is being frustrated because of one reason or another. I know there is a contract that was signed in Nyandarua, I think to deal with the windmill. And one of the provisions in the contract was that the government will pay X amount of money if the project is frustrated because of political reasons. And true to it, political reasons were created by everybody else, including the contractor himself. And I think as a country, we were supposed to have paid 4 billion shillings in form of penalty. So you conceive a project with a clear intention of stealing money from Kenya, and it is even put in the contract document. And other than for the fact that we got some favorable judgment in London, we were going to pay 4 billion shillings, and it's good to commend the government because they cherished that provision in the contract. So we must be careful with the contractors that we are engaging. KPLC today, in my constituency, and I'm told another 5 counties in the country, contracted a similar contractor who did some jolly jobs in maximization of electricity. And he's taken off in the 5 counties across the country. You can imagine the kind of embarrassment that he is causing people, leaders in all those areas, and the Kenya Power itself. Again, a similar behavior to what we are seeing to those, being done by these contractors who are contracted to do these dams. And the issue of having done inadequate background checks on the contractors, when you are dealing with this kind of huge amounts of money, Madam Speaker, these are things I'm saying is unforgivable. How would you award a contract, 4 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion to a person or a firm, and you have not done proper background checks? This is a thing that we need to pay attention to. Of course, Madam Speaker, as I conclude, we have to be very careful also to the pledges, the promises that we make during campaigning. Because we make, and they are good because Kenyans need to hear what any incoming government wants to do for them. But it is important that we be careful such that we don't make very huge promises that again we don't have adequate time to prepare for the implementation. And again, Kenyans start accusing you or saying that you lied to them. The pressure that is exerted by the public can also lead officers into making some very costly blunders of this nature. So we have to be careful with the way also we make these promises going forward. Some of these promises cannot be done during a political campaigning period. They will need to be done, and if they are to be done, they will need to be carried out from the books that may have been prepared by the previous governments. Madam Speaker, useful work that needs to be done in this country, but and again, very useful lessons that we need to learn from the mistakes that we have seen from these dams, but Kenyans will never be satisfied until we see, even as we continue implementing these projects, we need to see faces in court who are suffering because of the damage they have caused to our reputation and even the loss of money that has resulted.
The Honorable Member for Kisumu County, Honorable Buyu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to talk about dams, in effect, to talk about water. Like I already said, I'm a member of this committee, and we all know that water is an essential commodity that every single Kenyan needs and would benefit from. We also know that only 50% of this country actually has access to clean, safe, and adequate water, and Kenya can indeed be referred to as a water-scarce country with other countries also qualifying to be referred to as the same. The committee, in its findings, actually came up with a conclusion or recommendation that indeed, when you look at the distribution of the dams in this country, it is skewed, and you find that there are particular areas that actually have more than one or even more than two dams, when other areas that also need water have absolutely none. But having said that, the committee also found out that there's a very clear, consistent pattern in the way that these dams were procured and in the way that the whole system of dam construction was handled. First, there is awarding without due diligence, which some of the members have already referred to. After awarding without due diligence, you then have huge sums of money being paid upfront. And then you have, even after huge sums of money being paid upfront, within 2 months of construction or within 2 months of commencement of construction, you find that already there's request and payment of variations, sometimes going up to 2 billion shillings. And then after that, you find that work stalls. When the work stalls, then there's a whole lot of problems and back and forth into courts. And then you find that the contract ends and there's settlements that go up to billions of shillings. In the end, Kenyans are the ones who lose. The government loses a lot of money, and Kenyans who are hoping to benefit from the dams or construction of dams are actually left helpless and without benefit of water. When I'm talking about due diligence, and this has already been mentioned, when you look at Itare and you look at Thwake, really Itare, within 2 months of the commencement of the contract, Itare applies for bankruptcy way back in their home country of Italy. After Thwake had already been given the contract, it is then discovered that it was blacklisted by World Bank. The question the committee was asking was, how then do you do your due diligence if within no time the contractors or the people who win the contract are already in problems either financially or in terms of integrity and reputation? In terms of huge payments, you look at, excuse me, this is called age taking over, and I need my specs. When we're talking about huge advance payments, you look at Karimenu 2, where 4 billion shillings had already been paid even before work started. 4 billion shillings had been paid 24 months before the work started. Why? Because they put the cart before the horse. They already went and committed the project, paid money, and yet they had not acquired land, which obviously is a prerequisite to construction of a dam. You also look at Thwake, where 7 billion shillings had been paid, 7 billion shillings being paid when only 7% of the work has been done. So there is a consistent pattern through all these dams where steps are taken and steps that do not help in effective completion of the construction of dams. If you look at earlier variations, UMA, a variation of 318 million being requested and being paid just almost 2 months after construction has been begun. So you wonder, what is this variation for when work has not even gone to a certain extent? And when you look at the 318 million, that is 38% of the total cost of the project. How can you have got the project, get advance payment, and then get a variation payment of 38% of the whole project when you've only done 77% of the work? So these are things that the committee found out. And in terms of the work stalling, you look at Badaza, in Marsabit, you look at Umma in Kitui, where, for example,
Member for Wajir North, unfortunately, we are running out of time.
Madam Speaker, I also rise to support this motion, and I want to strongly agree with my sister that distribution of dams all over the country is not fair as it is. Madam Speaker, there is need to carry out a good needs assessment to ensure that the distribution of these dams is fairly done. I am aware of areas that, including my own constituency, when you look at the agricultural productivity is very high. However, the dam construction is low. Indeed, one was proposed 5-6 years ago, and to date it has not been done. That said, Madam Speaker, one thing we really need to improve in regards to this dam construction, one is the issue of public procurement that she mentioned. It is true that in a number of cases, due diligence is not observed, and contractors identified mostly areas outside where the dam construction is done, and their involvement in stakeholders engagement or engagement of the public participation is extremely low. In most cases, you will find that even site identification, a number of ponds are usually washed away during the floods because the identification process did not involve the public or key stakeholders, despite the fact that experts are required. But then local knowledge is also very important. That aside, both during the entry period and exit period of the project, community participation is very low. That way, the sense of ownership is extremely low. And in regards to that, you will find that once ownership is absent, then the issue of sustainability is always missing. That is a key area that we need to improve. That said, Madam Speaker, a number of ponds have stalled, and there is a need for us to put more effort in ensuring completion of the said ponds. There is a need to improve in terms of allocation by the Departmental Committee of Water to ensure that adequate finance is allocated and completion is observed. Madam Speaker, above all, one key thing that I want to emphasize, wherever we are making ponds, it is good to ensure that right from the assessment stage, public participation level, implementation level, and project exit level, there is need to ensure that there is adequate public participation for us to inculcate sense of ownership in the local community, such that when those who are constructing pull out of the dam, the community can own and ensure there is adequate sustainability. Madam Speaker, there is a dam in my constituency, there is a proposed dam in my constituency called Bute Dam, which have been proposed 5 years ago, still at the initial stage. It is my hope that that will be one of the dams that will be given special consideration and ensure its completion. because I have no doubt that, that food security will definitely be improved. As I am speaking, the locals have done pound construction using their own efforts, and the kind of output they are making, you can't believe. If only we ensure completion of that dam, the entire Wajir County and the neighboring Moyale County will be safe in terms of food security, and that way we will be in a position to ensure that the big four, and specifically the food security and the nutrition aspect, is well addressed. Thank you, and I support.
Honorable Sahal Ibrahim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I contributed to the dams the other day. I'm just waiting for the rhino.
Very well. Honorable Odhiambo Okoth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support the report as amended and thank the committee for the good work. Madam Speaker, what I'd like to say that in Kenya, it's not a question of whether we need a legal framework. We have a very good legal framework in relation to different issues, including in relation to public procurement. Madam Speaker, what we are lacking is constitutionalism, or the culture of constitutionalism. We abuse laws with impunity, knowing that we will not be held accountable. And until we are serious about prosecution and ensuring convictions, I think the culture will not change. If you look at countries where there's been very serious efforts at ensuring not just the public relations exercise that we tend to do as a country and that sometimes is mad in politics, then we will not actually see a change. And I'm looking forward to a time, Madam Speaker, that we'll be able to do that. Madam Speaker, I would also want to say, I know the committee meant very well when they came up with the objectives, but I wish that they had actually provided for determining equity in their objectives. I know that they were looking very specific at specific dams, but if you actually look at the geographical locations of some of these dams, and if this is a sample of what you have in the country or what obtains, then it means we are still not following the Constitution, because the Constitution talks about equity. And Madam Speaker, it is because of that that you are seeing that there's a deadlock at the Senate level when it comes to resources, because the little cake that is remaining at the national level is not shared equitably. So I would also want to encourage that we must be sure, we must ensure that that cake is shared equitably. And Madam Speaker, perhaps that is where we may need a legal framework that enhances parliamentary oversight, because what we have right now is we have a committee that will be looking at specific dams in specific areas. Madam Speaker, I could easily just decide that I have nothing to do with the Tare or with the Chemsusu or Northern Collector Tunnel or Karimeru, because they are not in my constituency. So because of that, the people who will be concerned about it is the committee, the people that are specifically in that committee. But I will only be bothered about the dams in my constituency. So it then means that our oversight role is very limited to a few members, especially because of the amount of work we have here. If we have a law that obligates different government ministries to give a report to Parliament, not just on the work they've done, but the work they're going to do annually. I know we pass the budget, but actually what goes out that is implemented is very different from what comes out from the budget. So I think there must be a way that Parliament is actually given every project that the government is doing in every part of the country and indicating how equitable it is, not just what the President gives us once in a year that Honorable Ichung'wah was asking for the other day. Madam Speaker, the other issue, because I know the other, I might have challenge of time, is that success normally has mothers. You know, we may not, because these ones may be having problems, so we have not highlighted. But it's good to actually raise concerns before we see a problem. Madam Speaker had said it in the other earlier motion, and I want to repeat it here, that you will see that when a successful project is done, and it's done by the national government, me in CDF, I will go and lay claim that CDF has done that project, and even brand it when it is not actually your project. That must also come in law, that only the institution that has done that should lay claim, whether orally or in written, of a project, so that we don't have people lay claim to having done dams with no money. And because we are politicizing these projects, that is why there's a lot of wastage of public resources. Madam Speaker, I want to agree with Honorable Jeremiah Kioni that we must limit the way we over-politicize these projects, because then they become very susceptible to abuse. Thank you, and I support.
The Honorable Dr. Nyikal.
Madam Speaker, and even the report of PIC that we had just discussed actually bring out that what is the problem in our system are actually failure to observe procedures and legal frameworks that we have. You look at it all round. If you look at what is happening in broad terms, companies abandon projects. And when they abandon projects, like in the case of Itare, then they go and declare themselves bankrupt. They have been paid more money than they should have. But in the process of monitoring, it was clear that these people were not performing well, because the certificates that they were being given for work done was getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they stopped. Nobody looked at that. That's a management issue. Then, again, variations of the cost. We all know that variation of any project should actually not be more than 25%. Again, here you find weak variations, like in the Bodasa Dam, where we started with 2.3, it went to 3.3. What was eventually paid is 2.1 billion, and that is at 56% of the work done. And then you find payment in advance. How do you make payment in advance? You don't even have land, but you're already paying the contractor. Again, these are all against the regulations. Now you look at that in Karimeru Dam, 4 billion paid even before the work started. Twake, 7 billion paid in advance. So then you find that projects are stalled, but payments are made. You look at Tuma Dam, the project was actually supposed to be 824 million, then it stalled, but what was paid was 1 billion. That is only with 68% of the work done. And then we come with the issue of this system of engineering, procuring, constructing, and funding, so that the same person is basically doing everything, because we are getting people to fund our projects. So, Madam Speaker, what we are seeing all around as a country is that we have systems in place, we have legal frameworks in place, we have actually structures in place, and I assure you, if you look at even the next debate that is coming, you still just find the same system. So we really have to come around as a country, and I think it was important, as others said, that we should start mentioning people. This person did not do this, this person did not do this, this person did this, instead of generalities. Then we can start taking action on them. But I end up by saying I support this project, I support the recommendations that we have made, and call upon our implementation committee to make sure that these generic principles that have been put in place be looked at during implementation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Wajir South, Honorable Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support this report, and I want to congratulate the committee with their chair for environment and natural resources. I want to support this simply because there are quite important findings that I have seen in that. However, it is very important that we need to understand that issues to do with dams in this country is quite serious, in the sense that we don't realize the values that dams can have on a lot of part of this country. Kenya has about 82% of its arid lands. Kenya has 82% of its land as arid, and 80% of these lands is does consider ecotourism. And ecotourism is one of the most important foreign exchange earner at about 165 billion. But why am I bringing ecotourism into dams? The reasons why I'm doing that is simply because dams are not only essential for domestic use, but also important for wildlife and animals that can utilize that. Unfortunately, that has not been what has been working on.
Honorable Sheikh, I'll give you 2 minutes to wind up because our time for the motion is up.
Certainly, thank you. But look, these dams that are, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll stick to that, given that time has rushed, actually. Look, what I realize is that these dams that are being established and created in this country has not been done through proper evaluations and working on, simply because you can imagine 35 billion shillings are spent on one single dam, when the entire country would have utilized that for about 500,000 shillings each. And therefore, those dams will have been supportive on. Wajir South is one of the areas that require such big dams. And unfortunately, that has not been covered by anybody. And it is not considered even the peace dams that are required in this place, simply because livestock rearing and utilizations in rural villages in Wajir South require water. And these dams were actually established haphazardly in other parts. And the amount of money that has been invested in such dams is not good enough, because it would have been utilized around the rest of the country so that can be used. So in this case, given the time, I've run out of time, I do support this. Thank you very much.
It's now time for
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more, like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola, taste the simple joys.
Who is calling me at this time? Can you just summarize your message in one word so I can know if I'm going to respond now or tomorrow? Yeah? If you're carrying good news, just text me handshake. Handshake is enough. I will know it is good news.
At this tune, who is calling? Dial star 811 star 758 hash. Dial star 811 star 758 hash.
On the next episode of
nakwambia nitizame kuanzia juu mpaka chini hapo. Mimi ukiniangalia mimi nataka kuwa mke wa pili. Mimi aswa, mimi nacheza. Afu nicheze na wewe. Hivi una nini wewe? Hebu toka hapo bwana.
Kipenzi cha roho yangu na vile twapendana. Malia ana roho huyu.
Mtaka yote basi ukosa yote. Nyinyi wanaume kwanza hamridhiki sana nyinyi. Hamridhiki kabisa. Tujeni kazi zenu.
He is one of the greatest players of all time who secured the 5th FIFA World Cup title for the Samba Boys of Brazil with the formidable team of Ronaldinho, Rivaldo and Roberto Carlos.
Cleberson's role is central, inviting ball in, clever sidestep from Rivaldo, one touch Ronaldo, two touches, and it may well be Auf Wiedersehen Germany.
It is another epic match starring the goal-scoring phenomenon Ronaldo this Saturday at 5 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 as he shut down the German machine with his magic in the 2002 final. Only on KBC Channel 1, Soca Finest.
Jumapili hii kwenye runinga ya KBC, ungana naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu kuanzia saa 1 hadi saa 2 asubuhi.
Ningetaka nikwambie, our Jehovah God, because the Bible says he is the same yesterday, today and forevermore. He is able to take you to a place of abundance. He is able to take you to Rehoboth in the name of Jesus Christ.
Kipindi ni neno la neema, ukiletewa naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu. Usikose.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Let me not repeat myself.
You don't have to repeat yourself. The spirit has refused.
Josephine Kamene.
Huh? Yani, you mean you are not paying rent because you want just to please a woman?
Laugh, my brother. Laugh is a beautiful thing.
You two guys, you have to put stop to this. You are constant eating. I just cleaned this class few minutes ago, and you already soiling it. Mumelongwa.
At least she's genuine about her feelings, unlike some watops here rejoicing chini kwa chini.
In the third level of the competition, Prince Sushim completes the level by harming the dog, whereas Prince Ashok completes the level by finding the solution to the dog's problem. In the fourth round, when their scores are equal, Acharya Chanakya is asked to decide the winner. He gives judgment in favor of Prince Sushim, and everyone waits.
Dog's ideas? He's so rebellious that he will change all the rules for sure if he gets the chance to reign.
Not only be considered as one of the best rulers of Magadh, but also as one of the most eminent rulers in the world. And the one respecting humanity becomes as lovable as God himself. Devanam Priya Ashok. Beloved of the gods, Ashok.
Your Highness, please honor the King Regent.
Why do I have this dream every now and then?
Serpent means crisis, and you dreamt of a serpent seated on the throne. Undoubtedly, it indicates that a grave trouble is about to befall the power.
Is this trouble related to the regency of Sushim?
So does that mean that father is in trouble now?
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
It will never happen again.
Niloksema,
You will not make the grade.
is that a threat?
It's not a threat.
It's a fact.
You can only do your best at the moment. The rest will fall into place.
How do you know that?
From boxing.
I wish everyone would stop staring at me. Just stop staring at me!
Na msibabaishwe na yale mnayowapitia, hata yawe magumu kiasi gani. Yote yatapita. La msingi ni kuweka tumaini letu kwa Mungu aliyetuumba. Katika kitabu cha Warumi 5:3, wala si hivyo tu, ila mnafurahia.
Kupata dhiki huleta zaburi. Bonyeza *811 *963#. Bonyeza *811 *963#.
Na hujambo mpenzi mtazamaji, karibu kwenye Darubini ya Channel 1. Leo ikiwa tarehe 10 mwezi wa 9 mwaka 2020, ambapo kama kawaida yetu tumekuandalia wewe nususi ya mambo kama ilivyotukia kutoka kila pembe ya dunia. Mtazamaji, habari zinazotufikia hivi sasa ni kuwa mkurugenzi wa mashtaka ya umma Nurdin Haji ameidhinisha kushtakiwa kwa gavana wa Garissa Ali Korane pamoja na watu wengine 4 kuhusiana na matumizi mabaya ya shilingi milioni 233. Tutakuwa tunakujuza taarifa hizo kwa ukamilifu, lakini kwanza tupate vidokezo.
Deeply pleased to join all of you today to commission this hospital, the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital, as we as a nation inch closer towards the national rollout of universal health coverage.
Azma ya serikali ya kutoa huduma bora ya afya kwa wote yapigwa jeki kufuatia ufunguzi rasmi wa hospitali ya rufaa ya chuo kikuu cha Kenyatta. Pigo kwa walokuwa wabunge. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta akataa kutia saini mswada wa marekebisho ya sheria kuhusu malipo ya kustaafu kwa wabunge. Na mbunge wa Imurwadikeri Johana Ngeno achiliwa huru kwa dhamana ya shilingi milioni 1 pesa taslim, huku mito ikitolewa kwa viongozi kuchunga matamshi yao. Naam, hujambo mtazamaji na karibu kwa taarifa zetu kwa ukamilifu. Jina langu ni Sarafina Robi, mwenzangu wa ishara ni Lesa Odingo. Kumbuka pia unaweza kuzipata taarifa zetu kwenye mitandao ya kijamii pale Facebook na Twitter @KBC Channel 1 na vile vile @Sarafin_Robi. Kama ni 5 ikiwa ni pamoja na matumizi mabaya ya ofisi, kujihusisha na mradi bila mipango ya awali, matumizi mabaya ya fedha za umma na vile vile mashtaka mengine ambayo tutakuwa tunakujuza ifikiapo mida ya saa 3. Tukianza pia ni kuwa sekta ya afya humo nchini imepigwa jeki kufuatia kufunguliwa rasmi kwa hospitali ya mafunzo, utafiti na rufaa ya chuo kikuu cha Kenyatta. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ambaye aliongoza uzinduzi huo amesema ni hatua kubwa katika azma ya taifa hili la kuimarisha huduma za matibabu kwa wote kwa kuongeza idadi ya hospitali za rufaa nchini, ambapo maelezo zaidi ni katika taarifa yake Beatrice Gatonye.
Ni Alhamisi alasiri katika kaunti ya Kiambu. Mamia walikusanyika kwenye hafla itakayopelekea kuongezeka kwa idadi ya hospitali za rufaa nchini. Shughuli hiyo iliongozwa na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Alisisitiza kujitolea kwa serikali kuhakikisha kuwepo kwa huduma bora za afya ili kuafikia mpango wake wa kutoa huduma za matibabu kwa wote.
It is truly gratifying today to note that Kenya's health sector continues to make tremendous progress. in overall national capacity, response, whilst being able to focus on all the other normal diseases.
Hospitali hiyo ya rufaa inatarajiwa kupunguza gharama ya matibabu. Kufikia sasa, wagonjwa 60,000 wametafuta huduma kwenye hospitali hiyo ambayo ina vifaa vya kisasa vyenye viwango vya kimataifa.
The impressive equipment, infrastructure, broad services, service range and highly trained staff. Indeed, I foresee the Kenyatta University Training, Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital becoming a leader not just in this country but in our region and also in the continent.
Rais amesema itasaidia kupunguza mzigo wa gharama ya matibabu kwa wagonjwa ambao mara kwa mara hutafuta huduma hiyo katika nchi za nje.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that cancers and renal diseases are increasingly becoming a major health challenge in Kenya. And this facility is positioned as part of our national response to that emerging health nightmare for many of our families across the country.
Rais ametoa changamoto kwa wahudumu wa afya kutoa huduma zao kwa moyo mmoja.
I only urge you to continue serving all the people who walk through your doors and strive to provide exceptionally high quality health care. And we urge you to be role models and the gold standard that all other Kenyans in Kenya and beyond shall seek to emulate.
Uhuru ambaye alizuru hospitali hiyo aliweka msingi wa ujenzi wa kituo cha kisasa cha kupiga picha za kimatibabu.
Let this facility be a constant reminder that when called upon to serve, we can be great builders who build greatly. I celebrate the progress we are making as a nation and as a people in enhancing the quality of life and the standards of living.
Hospitali hiyo ina vitanda 650 vikiwemo 76 vya wagonjwa wa saratani pamoja na wenye matatizo ya moyo miongoni mwa mengine. Pia kituo hicho kitatumiwa kufanya utafiti ili kutafuta suluhisho la matatizo ya kiafya humu nchini pamoja na kanda hili kwa jumla. Beatrice Gatonyengetich, Darubini ya Channel 1.
Naam, shukran sana Gatonye kwa taarifa hiyo. Sasa tuelekee kule Kisii ambapo naibu wa Rais William Ruto amewakosoa mawaziri ambao wanajihusisha katika siasa huku akiwatahadharisha polisi dhidi ya kutumiwa kwa maslahi ya kisiasa. Ruto ambaye alikuwa katika kaunti ya Kisii kwa mchango wa pesa kusaidia makundi na kina mama na vijana, pia aliwashtumu wanasiasa wenye mazoea ya kuwatumia vijana kufanya fujo. Maelezo zaidi ni katika taarifa yake Simon Achola.
Tunataka kila mtu aheshimiwe, afanye kazi mahali pake. Tunataka askari waendelee na kulinda usalama. Tunataka provincial administration wasimamie mambo ya usalama na utendakazi ya serikali. Wale wanasiasa wanataka kushindana, wawachane na police, wawachane na provincial administration, wakuje kiwanja, wakutane na mimi. Tumewaonyesha wale ambao wanataka kutumia rasilimali za county ama rasilimali za provincial administration vibaya, ati wananunua vijana wapigane, tuwaambie shame on you. Sijui kama tunaelewana. Yes, hizo pesa ambayo mnatoa, kwendeni patia mama mboga wako na shida kubwa, waendelee na biashara.
Na mtazamaji, sasa tuelekee kule Ukambani. Hebu tafakari hili. Wabunge 10 kutoka eneo la Ukambani wametunga na kuimba wimbo wa Kiswahili kuhusu janga la COVID-19. Wakiongozwa na seneta wa kaunti ya Kitui Enoch Wambua, wabunge hao wamewahimiza Wakenya kusalia na matumaini kwa vile janga hili litatokomea hivi karibuni. Wabunge hao wamevitaka vyombo vya habari kutowaangazia wanasiasa wanaoeneza jumbe za chuki. Kevin Washira alihudhuria hafla hiyo ya kuzinduliwa kwa wimbo huo na hii hapa taarifa yake.
Katika siku kadhaa zilizopita, Wakenya wamekuwa wakikumbana na matamshi yasiyokuwa ya kuridhisha kutoka kwa baadhi ya wanasiasa ambao wanastahili kuonyesha mfano mwema. Hata hivyo, wabunge 10 kutoka eneo la Mashariki ya Chini wamekuja pamoja kudhihirisha kwa taifa kuwa kuna wanasiasa ambao wanaweza kutoa mfano wa kuigwa na kueneza ujumbe za matumaini. Wakiongozwa na Seneta Enoch Wambua, wabunge hao wameimba wimbo ulio na ujumbe wa matumaini, huku wakiwahimiza Wakenya kuzingatia masharti yaliyowekwa na serikali kudhibiti virusi vya corona. Wakiongea wakati wa uzinduzi wa wimbo huo, wabunge hao wanamuziki walitoa wito kwa vyombo vya habari kukosa kuangazia wanasiasa wanaoeneza matamshi ya chuki.
We have heard people talk about drums of war being beaten. It starts from those little words. Those words which we utter without caring about the effect. That is how war begins. In 2007, it started in that manner.
Why are politicians, or rather the leaders, using insults so that they can become popular? I would like to request the media to cease from covering these people who are abusing others.
Afisa mkuu mtendaji wa bodi ya kuorodhesha filamu nchini Ezekiel Mutua, ambaye alihudhuria hafla hiyo, alitoa wito kwa wanamuziki kutumia talanta zao kueneza jumbe za matumaini na manufaa kwa wananchi. Kevin Washira, Darubini Channel 1.
Na mwimbo mzuri sana. Nchi hii na wasanii wengi kweli. Pale mtandaoni naona wengi wenu sana mnafuatilia taarifa zetu kwenye ukurasa wetu wa Facebook. Namuona Njeri Njenga anasema atazama kutoka Kasarani, Christine Natasha, Lucky Eddie, Flo Fee, Geoffrey Mburu Itote anasema atazama kutoka Naivasha, na wengine wengi tu ambao pia wanasema wanafuatilia taarifa zetu. Na mtazamaji, kufikia hapo tunachukua mapumziko mafupi. Tunarejea na taarifa zaidi, usiende mbali.
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more, like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola, taste the simple joys.
This Thursday on KBC Channel 1 for a program that is objective and offers answers to matters economic, security, social, political, food, infrastructure, and setting the agenda. Join us for Charging Currents.
It is a practice that has been a thorn for this nation for many decades. Watch it on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1.
On the next episode of
Yo swali ngijibu tutakesha hapa, nakwambia nitizame kuanzia juu mpaka chini. Hapo. Mimi ukiniangalia mimi natakuwa mke wa pili. Mimi aswa, mimi nacheza. Afu nicheze na wewe. Hivi una nini wewe? Hebu toka hapo bwana.
Kipenzi cha roho yangu na vile twapendana. Malia ana roho huyu.
Mtaka yote basi ukosa yote. Nyinyi wanaume kwanza hamridhiki sana nyinyi. Hamridhiki kabisa.
Tujali kazi zenu
Na mtazamaji, unaendelea kutazama Darubini ya Channel 1. Kumbuka unaweza kuzipata taarifa zetu kwenye mitandao ya kijamii pale Facebook @KBC Channel 1 @Sarafina_Robi na vile vile pale Twitter. Tukiendelea ni kwa upande wa mashtaka kwenye kesi ya mauaji ya Kevin Omwenga mwenye umri wa miaka 28 ulimwasilisha mshtakiwa watatu kwa jina Yatha Bahati Josiu ambaye ni raia wa Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo baada ya kukamatwa Jumatano wiki hii. Bahati sasa ni mshtakiwa watatu kwenye kesi hiyo inayowakabili Chris Obure na Robert Bodo ambao wanakabiliwa na mashtaka ya mauaji ya Omwenga ambaye aliuawa majuma matatu yaliyopita katika eneo la Kilimani hapa Nairobi.
Kesi ya mauaji ya Kevin Omwenga mwenye umri wa miaka 28 katika eneo la Kilimani wiki tatu zilizopita inaendelea huku mshukiwa watatu akiwasilishwa. Mshukiwa huyo kwa jina Yatha Bahati Josiu ambaye ni raia wa Kongo alikamatwa siku ya Jumatano na kufikishwa mbele ya hakimu Sinkian Tobiko. Pande wa mashtaka ulitaka mshukiwa huyo kuzuiliwa kwa siku 7 ili uchunguzi ukamilishwe. Uchunguzi unaonyesha kwamba Bahati, marehemu, pamoja na washukiwa wengine Chris Obure na Robert Bodo wamekuwa wakiwasiliana na huenda hawakuelewana kwenye mpango fulani na kupelekea kuuawa kwa kupigwa risasi kwa Kevin Omwenga. Simu ya Bahati imetwaliwa na maafisa wanaochunguza kisa hicho kwa uchunguzi zaidi. Kulingana na upande wa mashtaka, wakati wa kukamatwa kwake, mshukiwa huyo hakutoa sababu za kuridhisha kuhusiana na kutoa mapato yake humu nchini.
Now, the parameters that the court ought to look at are the compelling reasons presented by the applicant.
Kupitia kwa wakili wake Samson Nyaberi, mshukiwa huyu alipinga kuzuiliwa kwa muda wa siku 7 zaidi na kutaka aachiliwe kwa dhamana. Hata hivyo, aliachiliwa kwa dhamana ya shilingi 100,000 pesa taslim na kuagizwa kujiwasilisha kwa maafisa wanaochunguza kesi hiyo wakati anapohitajika, kwani hakukuwa na sababu za kutosha za kuendelea kumzuia kwa siku 7.
The court has considered the application and does decline to remand the respondent as has been sought in the application. The respondent's passport is already in custody of the investigator and it shall so remain. And the phone is also in custody of the investigators and it shall so remain. And the court directs the release of the respondent.
Chris Obure na Robert Bodo wanatarajiwa kujibu mashtaka yanayowakabili siku ya Ijumaa baada ya Chris Obure kukosa kufika mahakamani kwani alipelekwa katika hospitali ya Riruta kufanyiwa uchunguzi wa kimatibabu kuhusiana na ugonjwa wa COVID-19. Nikiripotia Darubini, jina langu ni Sarafina, Robi.
Na mkando na taarifa yote tuliyokuandalia hapo awali, sasa tuangazie masuala ya COVID-19 ambapo Wizara ya Afya inapania kuzindua kituo cha kutoa ushauri wa kisaikolojia kwa njia ya video kushughulikia masuala ya afya ya akili yanayotokana na janga la COVID-19. Katibu mwandamizi katika wizara hiyo Dr. Rashid Aman amesema wizara hiyo itatekeleza kikamilifu ripoti kuhusu afya ya kiakili ili kuhakikisha walioathiriwa wanapata huduma. Haya yanajiri huku nchi hii ikirekodi visa 143 vya maambukizi ya ugonjwa wa corona na vifo 5 zaidi chini ya saa 24 zilizopita.
Kulingana na takwimu za shirika la afya duniani, kulikuwa na ongezeko la visa vya watu kujitoa uhai kwa 58% humu nchini kati ya mwaka 2008 na 2017. Takwimu hizo pia zinaonyesha kwamba visa 317 vya watu kujitoa uhai vinaripotiwa kila mwaka nchini Kenya, huku visa 1800 vikiripotiwa kote ulimwenguni. Kwenye maadhimisho ya mwaka huu ya siku ya kukabiliana na visa vya kujitoa uhai yaliyofanyika katika hospitali ya kitaifa ya mafunzo na rufaa ya Mathari, katibu mwandamizi katika Wizara ya Afya Daktari Rashid Aman alielezea umuhimu wa kuzingatiwa kwa makini kwa afya ya akili hususan wakati huu wa janga la COVID-19.
We are considering setting up a telecounseling and telepsychiatry center here, which we'll also have a call center that will have suicide prevention hotline numbers that Kenyans can call into, receive counseling and guidance.
Aman amesema serikali inapania kuleta huduma karibu na wananchi huku akitoa wito kwa kila mmoja kuwajibika.
During a crisis like COVID-19, most people will experience some degree of distress, such as feelings of anxiety, hopelessness, sadness, difficulty in sleeping, fatigue, irritability.
COVID-19 has further compounded the risk of mental health in our society. Many more people are presenting with stress, anxiety, depression.
And to take people seriously, especially so when they suspect that someone at home, someone in the family, someone that they love, someone in the community is mentally unsettled.
Haya yanajiri huku nchi ikirekodi visa 143 zaidi vya maambukizi ya ugonjwa wa corona kutoka kwa watu 3851 waliofanyiwa uchunguzi wa kimatibabu na kufikisha 35,603 wale walioambukizwa ugonjwa huo. Idadi ya waliopona kutokana na ugonjwa huu imeongezeka na kufika 22,47 baada ya wagonjwa 490 kuthibitishwa kupona. Hata hivyo watu 5 zaidi wamefariki kutokana na ugonjwa huo na kufikisha 612 jumla ya waliofariki nchini. Nancy Okware, Darubini ya Channel 1.
Na shukrani Okware kwa taarifa hiyo. Mtazamaji, kwingineko ni kuwa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta amekataa kutia saini mswada wa marekebisho ya malipo ya uzeeni ya wabunge, hatua ambayo ni pigo kwa wabunge waliohudumu baina ya miaka ya 1984 na 2001. Mswada huo ambao ulikuwa ukitaka wabunge hao wa zamani kulipwa shilingi 100,000 kila mwezi uliibua malalamishi mengi kutoka kwa wananchi, huku tume ya kuianisha mishahara nchini ikimtaka rais kutoidhinisha. Wakati huo kwenye hatua ya kipekee, mkurugenzi wa shirika la kutoa huduma kwa jiji la Nairobi, Meja Jenerali Mohamed Abdalla Badi, sasa atakuwa akikaa katika vikao vya baraza la mawaziri baada ya kula kiapo. Gladys Mungai anatuarifu zaidi.
Shinikizo kutoka kwa baadhi ya Wakenya, makundi ya kijamii na tume ya kuiainisha mishahara nchini SRC ya kumtaka Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kutotia saini mswada wa marekebisho ya malipo ya uzeeni ya wabunge yanaonekana kuzaa matunda baada ya Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kukataa kutia saini mswada huo tata. Kwenye mawasiliano waliotoa kwa bunge, rais anasema kwamba kutia saini mswada huo kutowaongezea Wakenya mzigo na hauwezi kudumishwa. Rais aliongeza kwamba malipo ya kustaafu ya wabunge hukusanywa kwa kuambatana na pesa wanazotozwa wakati wanapohudumu, na marekebisho yaliyopendekezwa yamekosa kubainisha mchango wa wanachama. Spika aliagiza kamati ya fedha na mipango ya kitaifa kuchunguza kwa makini ripoti ya rais na kutoa ripoti katika muda wa siku 21.
The bill overlooks the mandates of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission under the Constitution, which comprises, among others, the setting and review of remuneration and benefits for all state officers, who include members of parliament. And finally, the proposed pension payment will result in an annual cost implication of about 444 million shillings. Added to this will be the almost certain demand for similar upward review of pension benefits by other retired state and public officers, which is within their rights to demand. The resultant ripple effect is unaffordable and fiscally unsustainable. Consequently, His Excellency the President recommends deletion of the said clause of the bill, which as a matter of fact is the primary content of the bill.
Mswada huo ulikuwa ukipendekeza kwa wabunge waliohudumu baina ya mwaka 1984 na mwaka 2001 kulipwa shilingi 100,000 kila mwezi, ambazo ni sawa na kutumia shilingi bilioni 1.7 kila mwaka. Wakati huo mkurugenzi wa shirika la kutoa huduma kwa jiji la Nairobi, Mohamed Abdalla Badi, amejiunga rasmi na baraza la mawaziri baada ya kula kiapo katika hafla iliyoongozwa na mkuu wa utumishi wa umma na kuhudhuriwa na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Sasa atakuwa akihudhuria na kushiriki katika mikutano ya baraza la mawaziri. Rais aliongoza mkutano wa kwanza wa baraza la mawaziri tangu mawaziri kutoka katika likizo ya majuma mawili. Mikakati kadhaa ya kisera inayolenga kuimarisha uchumi wakati na baada ya janga la virusi vya corona ilijadiliwa. Hii ni pamoja na kuidhinishwa kwa mkataba wa makubaliano wa kubadilishwa kwa hudumu wa afya baina mataifa ya Kenya na Ushelisheli, kuidhinishwa kwa mipango baina ya mashirika mbalimbali ili kuzuia kukabiliana na dhulma za kijinsia, kuanzishwa kwa mpango wa mikopo kwa mtaji wa mwanzo wa shilingi bilioni 10, utekelezaji wa miradi ya kijamii katika eneo la Mukuru kwa dhamani ya shilingi bilioni 15 kama sehemu ya utoaji wa nyumba za gharama nafuu, Sera za biashara ndogo ndogo na za kadri nchini pia ziliidhinishwa, sawa na uorodheshaji wa mti wa mianzi kama mmea. Nikiripotia Darubini ya Channel 1, naitwa Gladys Mungai.
Na mtazamaji, sasa tuelekee viwanjani ambapo kinara wa tawi la Nairobi la shirikisho la riadha humo nchini Barnabas Korir amesema matayarisho ya raundi ya jijini Nairobi ya msururu wa mabara yamekaribia kukamilika, huku mashindano hayo yakiwa yameratibiwa kuandaliwa tarehe 3 mwezi Oktoba. Aidha, hili litakuwa kongamano la kwanza la michezo kuandaliwa humo nchini tangu chamko la virusi vya korona mapema mwezi huu Machi kusitisha michezo kote duniani.
Mashindano hayo yatakayoandaliwa jijini Nairobi yanatarajiwa kuashiria jinsi michezo itakavyorejelewa humu nchini, huku mashabiki wa michezo wakisubiri tangazo rasmi kutoka kwa waziri wa michezo Amina Mohamed.
Athletics is a little bit different because we were also going by the World Athletics guidelines on how we can resume as athletics body in the sport, and we have also shared that with the Minister of Sports, and we will also be using the same models the other events in Europe are using, so that we can resume. There are those countries that were allowing spectators in the stadium. There are those do not allow, but then allowed only the competitors.
Mkurugenzi wa mashindano hayo Barnabas Korir amesema kuwa kamati andalizi tayari imeteuliwa, huku ukarabati wa uwanja wa taifa wa Nyayo ukikaribia kukamilika.
Yes, we have worked very closely with the CS, Dr. Amina Mohamed. We have also her PS, who has done a great job in assisting us and ensuring that we get the support that is required. And I want to say that that this is the first time we have got full support from the people responsible for sports in the country, especially the PS and the CS. They have done a good job. Therefore, the government has been there to make sure that this was successful. The finances that we are still waiting is coming, and I think that by next week we should be ready to host this event.
Aidha, waandalizi wameomba serikali kuwaruhusu mashabiki wachache kuhudhuria mashindano hayo ambayo yatashuhudia wanariadha maarufu wakishiriki, akiwemo Sofiane El Bakali wa Morocco atakabiliana na wanariadha wa nchini katika mbio za mita 3000 kuruka viunzi na maji.
This year has been quite bad for most of the athletes. They did not have competitions because of the cancellation and the effects of the coronavirus. So they did not have the opportunity to compete in many races. So the remaining ones, everybody wants to come and participate so that they don't end the year with nothing. So I'm sure that with that in mind, we are going to have those top athletes that will be racing the Continental Tour.
Kenya ilitarajiwa kuandaa mashindano hayo tarehe 26 mwezi huu, lakini yakaahirishwa kwa juma moja ili kuwapa wanariadha fursa ya kushiriki mashindano ya Diamond League tarehe 24 jijini Paris.
Mtazamaji, kwingineko ni kwa kampuni inayosimamia mashindano makuu ya gofu humo nchini pamoja na waandalizi wa msururu wa gofu barani Ulaya leo wametangaza kufutiliwa mbali kwa mashindano ya Kenya Open yaliyoratibiwa kuandaliwa tarehe 12 hadi 15 mwezi Novemba. Awali mashindano hayo yalikuwa yameratibiwa kuandaliwa tarehe 12 hadi 15 mwezi Machi, lakini yakaahirishwa kutokana na janga la virusi vya korona. Na mtazamaji, na kufikia hapo ndipo tunatia kikomo, na kwa wote waliofuatilia taarifa zetu akiwemo Wero Tempuriong, anasema alikuwa akitazama kutoka Makutano Kapenguria, vile vile Peterson Rubandi amesema amekuwa akifuatilia, Ricky Nelson amesema alikuwa akifuatilia, na vile vile pale Facebook na waona Grandon CK Kirui, Mika Motuku, Morgan Mandela, Sergeant Wesley Onchaga amesema amekuwa akifuatilia kutoka Kisii, na Jay Wasafi amesema anatazama Darubini mkiwa Mombasa Mishomoroni. Tunasema shukrani za dhati sana kwa kufuatilia taarifa zetu hii leo. Nimekuwa wako Sarafina Robi, mwenzangu wa ishara ni Lensa Odingo. Mariambo anakuletea hali ya hewa. Kuwa na usiku mwanana.
Shukran za dhati kwa kujumuika nasi katika awamu nyingine ya utabiri wa hali ya hewa popote ulipo jioni ya leo. Natumayo mzima. Naitwa Mariambo. Ni usiku wenye ukavu kote nchini isipokuwa katika baadhi ya maeneo ya Elgeyo Marakwet na Uasin Gishu ambapo kuna mvua katika maeneo machache. Hapo kesho asubuhi kutakuwa na hali ya mawingu hapa Nairobi, sehemu za Machakos, Makindu, Nyeri na viungani mwake, japo pia vipindi vya jua vitachomoza nyakati za asubuhi. Ukanda wa pwani, maeneo ya Mombasa, Lamu, Kilifi, japo kutakuwa na hali ya mawingu na vipindi vya jua, pia tutarajie manyunyu ya mvua katika maeneo hayo. Katika sehemu za kaskazini mashariki mwa nchi hadi katika maeneo ya Lodwar, Samburu na viungani mwake, vile vile kutakuwa na vipindi vya jua nyakati za asubuhi. Mchana utakuwa wenye mvua katika maeneo kadha wa kadha, zikiwemo sehemu za Kisii, Kisumu, Kakamega na viungani mwake, na vile vile katika sehemu za Eldoret, Kericho hadi katika maeneo ya Kisumu, mvua yenyewe ikiandamana na ngurumo za radi. Lodwar, Samburu, Turkana vile vile kutakuwa na mvua katika maeneo machache. Kaskazini mashariki mwa nchi hadi katika sehemu za ukanda wa pwani tutarajie kuwepo kwa vipindi vya jua. Viwango vya joto vitafikia nyuzi 20 hapa Nairobi, 35 katika maeneo ya Garissa, 38 katika maeneo ya Mandera. Na basi kwa hayo natamatisha utabiri wa hali ya hewa jioni leo. Tupate sasa hali itakavyokuwa katika maeneo mengine duniani. Kwaheri.
Vera Beauty College.
Vera Beauty and Fashion College, with branches in Nairobi, Eldoret, Thika and Meru. Did you know that we are a TVET approved institution? We offer courses in fashion design, interior design and soft furnishing, event decoration, flower arrangement,